I'm Kristen at Flowers and Fancies. Thanks for joining me for our wreath decorating tips and tricks. If you ordered a kit from us online or through our sales department, all of your supplies will be included in a bag similar to this with fresh greens to add as well. If you're just here for inspiration, welcome. Feel free to customize as you go and use the techniques we discuss here to design your wreath in your own personal style. So let's get started. I'm going to be working right now with the traditional wreath. So I have the plaid bow that you received if you chose the traditional option, and that's going to be the first thing that we do. All of the ribbons that are included both in the metallic and in the burlap are wired and relatively thin, so they'll all kind of be the same as you're working through with it. But I'm going to do the example with this. If you need something a little bit more up close, we do have a video of just bow making, but I'm going to go nice and slow and do it twice so that you can follow along and take your time and get the bow right. So there's kind of two different ways that you can make your bow. One has longer tails and fewer loops. The other one is going to have short little tails and more loops up top, kind of like a present bow. And depending on where you're going to put this on your wreath might dictate which one you want to use. So looking at your wreath here, so you could do something that's more kind of an asymmetrical swag with the greens and the decorations that you received in your kit and put your bow sort of off to the side here. Or if you're going for a more traditional placement on your wreath, you go at the top or at the bottom. So at the bottom, depending on where it's hanging, you might want to have the tails hanging. Or if you feel like that's going to get in the way or sort of blow around too much, then maybe you want to make a present style bow for here or here. Off to the side here, it always looks nice with tails, so I would advise to do the longer tail version if you're going to do an asymmetrical placement on your wreath. So, starting with our ribbon, you should have about 3 yards. And if you're using your own ribbon, the way that I'm going to put this together is with the 3 yards of ribbon, but if you want a fuller bow with long tails as well, then you're going to need to go up probably 1 yard or 2. So I'm going to start with, and this is going to be the long tailed ribbon, I'm going to start with about a foot and change of the ribbon. So let's say, what's that, 14 inches maybe? I'm going to pinch it. This is going to be one of our tails. We're going to leave a little bit of wiggle room at the bottom because we're going to trim these at the end too, either straight or an angle or a dovetail. So we're going to go about 14 inches up, maybe a little more. And then I'm going to pinch between my pointer finger, my middle finger, and my thumb, and make a super, super tight little spot here where I'm going to keep pushing the ribbon in, and that's going to be the center of our bow. So I've got my short piece here, my long piece is over here, and I'm going to start by taking it and making a loop. Now the wire is nice because it's going to hold it sort of in its shape for you, but if the wire sort of gets smushed or overlaps, just straighten it as you go. So I like to do my first loop, and then I take this bottom part and I squish it back into my fingers here. So we've got a loop going on. And once I put it in place like that, I go back in and sort of adjust it and see if I need to tug it to make it a little shorter or pull it out a little bit more. But then I have my first loop, and then I have both of the tails are on one side of the ribbon. So I'm going to twist it here. Now all of the ribbons, for the most part, are printed on both sides, so it's not mandatory that you twist it. But a lot of the ribbons that you work with for the holiday have either like a gold backing or like an outdoor kind of like a slick plastic backing and a print on one side. So in that case, you really, really, really want to be meticulous about making sure that the print side is on the outside. And that's why we twist it before we make our next loop. So the outside of the ribbon with the print is going to be on the outside of your loop. I'm going to take that and make a similar size loop. We're going to go right back in between the fingers. We're basically making like a figure 8. So I have 1, 2 loops and a tail. I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to do one more on the side. Twisting the ribbon also, it gives a little bit of body, so your loops don't get smushed as flat. So even if you're not working with a one-sided ribbon, it's nice to always keep the loop in there because it gives it a little bit more shape. Okay, so we're 2. And then I've got my third. Twist it, and my third loop in here. So you see 3, and then I have this one, and then right back into the middle, and 3. So now what you should have is equal loops on both sides, one tail coming to one side and a longer tail going off to the other side. Now what we're going to do is make a thumb loop, which is a little bit different, a little bit tricky. So rather than taking our fabric out and then bringing it back in, we're going to twist it and we're going to bring it over our thumb. So we're starting with the ribbon off in this direction, we're twisting, we're bringing it over our thumb this way, looping it under, and pinching it underneath. So you're going to end with your tail going the same direction, not the other way like we have been doing. So one more time, going like this, got my ribbon tail off to the side, and then I'm going to come over my thumb and tuck it in that way, right back in with the rest of the ribbon, like so. And then I'm going to adjust my loops so that they're all sort of front facing, about the same size. It's okay to have them a little bit different in size, but generally the same size. You don't have one super long tail. And then I'm going to bring this tail here over with the other one. So we're going to grab both of our tails and pull them in one direction. Because when it hangs, we're going to want our tails to go in one direction. So pull both your tails in one direction, fluff up your bow, and then you're going to go through this middle part here, where your thumb is, with either a piece of spool wire or a piece of chenille, which is just a fancy word for pipe cleaner, all available at the craft store. If you ordered the kit through us, it will come with chenilles or pipe cleaners. That's usually what we use because the little fuzzy on the chenille helps kind of grip when you twist it, and also it is a lighter gauge wire, so it's easy to twist and it's easier on your hands. I have some raffia wire here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this one with that one. Again, you're going to go through right where your thumb is, and then you're going to put the wire so that it is essentially taking the place of your fingers. So what that means is we need to put it through right where our thumb is, take both of the ends and come behind the bow and push the loops forward. So now we have all of our loops on one side, and we have the two ends of our chenille or our wire going to the other side. And we're gonna take that and we're gonna twist it super duper tight. Go around it maybe like 4 or 5 times. You'll have two ends coming out like this. And then, once it's tied off nice and tight, you want to simply fluff your loops and adjust your thumb hole so it covers, or your thumb loop so it covers the wire, and bring your tails down to the front. And then I like to leave them long but stagger them, and usually I just cut them at an angle. So we're going to do one evened off like this. I'll do one a little bit longer, like this. Okay. So here's the bow. Now, if you are putting it on the wreath here, it's nice because it has those two tails that kind of come down, make it look kind of nice. And if you do it up here, you might want to, have it hanging down in the front of your wreath, maybe cut them a little bit closer to the same size, and that looks nice as well. I feel like if you're going for it down here, you might want to do the present style bow, but it's completely up to you. I'm going to show you the present style bow now. So here's one, present style bow. Now for this one, we're going to start with a much, much, much shorter tail. So only about 6 inches, and pinch it. Okay? Watch, I'm going to do it this way, I'm working away. So again, I have a short piece here, long piece here. And I'm going to start with my loops. 1. I'm going to try to get about 5 loops per side. 2. Again, just figure 8, twist, come right back into that middle, twist, continuing. Again, if you want a much fluffier bow or a larger bow, certainly go maybe like 2 more yards, and just you can keep doing this until you run out of ribbon, basically. 4, in a little. And for this one, you can make your last loops a little bit smaller. So I do the 3 that are pretty much the same size, and my last 2 per side. I'm gonna make a little bit smaller because we're not doing a thumb loop for this one. So the fluffier small loops in close to it are gonna sort of cover that wire for us instead. Okay, so I have those in like that. I have my one ribbon to one side and one to the other. And for this bow, you can kind of leave it that way if you want to. But once you have your chenille around it, you can adjust them to the same side. This time I'll show you with the chenille, or pipe cleaner. This is what you'll receive in your kit. And it's the same thing, just go right through where your thumb is, about halfway on the chenille. Pull the 2 ends to the back, and see I'm holding all of the ribbon, all of the bow to the one side, and I have the 2 pieces of chenille coming off to the side, and then I'm just gonna twist it super duper tight. And go around it maybe 3 different times. Okay. So now we have a fluffier bow, these shorter tails, and you can definitely take, I'm gonna pull one of your tails to the other side so they're both on the same side. That works too. And I got both of my tails over here. And I can position it this way. And that looks nice also. Now for this one, I'm gonna dovetail it because I think that looks pretty. So what you do to dovetail is you take your ribbon and you fold it over, just like this, so it's in half. Then you're gonna take your scissors and you're gonna cut from the center to the end. So where your finished end is, where the wire is, you're gonna cut from the center to the end, like so. And then when you open it up, you get this cute little bee at the bottom. Looks very festive. Do the same thing with the other side. I have a little bit longer, so I'm gonna trim this a little bit more off this one so they're more equal in size. Okay, so I have it lined up, like so, and like so. And like a little curl on it, super cute. Okay, and then you have your present bow. So again, this one would, I mean, you could do it anywhere. You could really put it on the side if you like, but it looks really nice at the bottom or at the top, I think. But you'll make the decision for your wreath. Okay, so you have our 2 styles of bow. And I should mention, if you wanted to get a little crazy with it, you could do a bow that's sort of like a shoestring, and then you'll have lots of leftovers, and then you'll have the leftovers that can be used in the wreath as well. So if I take this one apart, right, so this was our original one that I did with the 2 loops, or with the fewer loops and the longer tails. And I'm just gonna do a shoestring bow. So again, I'm gonna leave a nice long tail, pinch it. And then I'm just gonna do one on one side, one on the other. And just a little thumb loop in the center. Same way we did it before, coming over the thumb. And pull. You want your thumb loop to be in proportion to your bow though. So since I'm only doing this little, kind of like a bow tie, I'm making a much smaller thumb loop. On the larger ones, then you want to have the larger loop like I showed in the first bow. And I'm gonna cut my ribbon so it's about the same length. Yeah. And I'll go through it with the chenille. Then, with your leftover ribbon, you can use wire, spool wire, whatever for this. You can cut little sections, let's say, let's do 6 inch, 6 inch. And then you just tuck them around, make like a little cuff with it, like this, that's all. Actually make these a little larger. And you just pinch the bottom together where it overlaps. And just run a piece of wire through it. It's so small, you really don't need a chenille here, so spool wire works fine, or raffia wire works fine. then you have just like these little loops. So then with these, you can put those all throughout. Got a couple more here. Move it and pinch it. And then just put wire through it. I like to think of it kind of like a bag of bread, you know, like a twist tie. Just going to twist it, twist it, twist it, just tight as you can. And then you have all these cute little loops, and you can have glue these right into your ribbon, or into your wreath as well, with the same amount of ribbon. So all of this, again, has been with 3 yards of ribbon. So again, if you are thinking that you might want to do maybe a present style bow with loops throughout, then you're definitely going to want, 4 or 5 yards of ribbon when you're shopping. And then this one too, you could either use it on the side for like a pretty asymmetrical placement, and then you have your tails hanging, or you could probably even do it at the top and then have the bow or the streamers hanging down the front, which is always really pretty too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and affix my bow. Let's see here. I'm gonna do mine at the bottom. I'm just gonna use the chenille that it's on and twist it around. But it's kind of hard to do. It's like, fluff your wreath, pull all the pieces up, so you can feel the metal frame underneath it, or the base. Get it down so that you're going around that frame and you don't have a whole lot of greens in the way. Twist that on, and go ahead and adjust it so it's going the right way. And then we'll start adding our decorations. So I like to start with the greens first. These pre-made wreaths that we have with the fur, all of the greens are going in the same direction. So we're going to add all of our greens in that same direction. And I'm going to take my magnolia and I'm going to break all of the leaves off. And I'm going to add them in to fluff up my wreath the entire way around. Now, if instead you wanted to do an asymmetrical wreath, and I'm just gonna pick this up. So, okay, right now we have a more traditional style. Let's say we're gonna go for, I'm just gonna kind of pretend here. We're gonna do maybe the 3-loop bow with the tails on this side. Now in that case, you wanna keep your greens a little bit longer. You can still take some off of the bottom to use later, but it's nice to keep it as a full piece because then you can put it in around your bow to make sort of like more of an asymmetrical swag going on the side of the wreath instead of all the way around the wreath. So you wanna, if you're gonna do a side placement on your bow, leave your greens a little bit longer, and then that way you can put them in to make the swag. I'm gonna work on this one first. For these, they come in all different sizes. I usually just use them as is, and I put glue on like this whole bottom part and just get it in there in between the layers of the fur. If you have massive leaves, you can always sort of trim the bottom off here to make a longer stem. That'll make the leaf part shorter and the stem longer, and then you still want to cover that part with the glue as if it were the bottom of the leaf, but that'll make the leaf look a little bit smaller and it'll be easier to tuck it in. These are all pretty good size, so I'm not going to cut any of the bottoms of the leaf off. I'm going to start at my bow, I'm going to start working around. So I've got a section here, I'm just going to tuck it in. After I put a couple in, I'll pick it up and show you what it looks like. And it's supposed to look natural, so don't be, super fussy about having them all go in a perfect line. I mean, unless that's your look. If you want it to look like that, then yes, go for it. But, if you're just trying to kind of make the wreath look more full, which is what I'm going for with this, is to make it just look like more full and interesting. Then, you know, put them in, and you can put them in so you have 1 and then 1, 2, and then 1, 2. And that just kind of makes it look a little bit more natural, instead of having them all like lined up in a row. I'm putting the magnolia in just because it's the largest leaf that I'm working with, so I'm just getting it in there early. But you can put the cedar in first if that works better for you. I'm gonna come in with the cedar next. And the cedar, you know, you might get a piece like this that just is kind of Charlie Brown Christmas tree and small. We'll break that into 2 pieces to use. You have 1 nice tip, and then you'll have this little bottom part to use as well. You don't need to keep these. Or sometimes you end up with ones that are very branchy. So you have pieces like this. We have nice longer pieces coming off the side. So you want to use those individually. So again, keep a nice top piece for yourself. But then all of these individual pieces can be trimmed from, the main stem. Yeah, keep them all for now. If you end up throwing them away, no big deal. But it's nice to have them just in case. Some of the smaller pieces are actually nice to come back in with at the end of the wreath, once you have everything else in place, just to, you know, cover any places where there's going to be a wire showing, or, you know, just cover up anything weird. So, yeah, I'm gonna trim these up. And we're gonna do the same thing with these. We're just gonna go in between the fir and the magnolia that we already had in there, and we're just going to hot glue on the bottom. And for these, I like to clean the bottoms a little bit better, so you have more of a point, like this. And then you put the glue on both sides, like all the way around to the stem, and then get it in there. Off the side for a sec. Okay. Now, if you were doing the more asymmetrical styled wreath, I had mentioned you wanted to keep some of your greens more whole. So the same thing applies for the cedar. If you are doing the more asymmetrical styled wreath, then you want to at least use like this much of a top piece to go in one direction. And then you can use the little shreds off the bottom to go in around that. Since you're not trying to get around the entire wreath with it, you don't have to worry about it. But you know, if I'm going to the side like this instead, and let's pretend this magnolia is in here and I just have the magnolia on either side, you want to keep these a bit longer too, because we're going to put them in like this and like this to make that kind of asymmetrical swag on our wreath. So if you are doing that design style, you don't want to trim it down into such small pieces. You want to try to keep the tops a little bit longer and intact, and then you still have these little bits at the bottom that you can feed in around the bow. But if you're doing it more traditional, like this, where you're going all the way around, you can cut it down quite a bit, because we're just going to tuck them in the same. So they should be about the same size as the magnolia, really, in length. So again, you're going to kind of make sure there's a little pointy, clean part at the bottom. You don't want it to be too bushy at the bottom. And then we're just going to go in and just start layering it in between. And you can use these pieces too, because we're going to tuck them in anyway, so you won't see this little nubby part. I like using the cedar just because it's a different texture, even though it's more green, you know, it's a different texture and it's a little bit brighter than the fir at the base. So it just gives it a little bit more interest, makes the wreath look a little bit more special. traditional styled packet, my accent green is holly. It is tough to work with, so be very careful because you know it is pointy. And you're just gonna break it down into pieces. So I'm gonna have a piece like this. Sometimes you get it and it's much bunchier, so you don't really have the luxury of having these longer pieces, but this stuff is pretty nice and long, so you'll get like longer pieces like this. Try to leave some of the greens on it so you have that pretty variegated leaf in there as well. So you have like this here. And just break it down into as many pieces as you can use. You know, if it's getting to the point where you only have a stem, you know, it's like this long, like little, then it's gonna be tough to use that. But as long as you have a decent sized stem, you can glue it in. So I have lots of pretty holly to go in. And we also have our sticks. So we get the holly in first, and then I'll move on to the birch. Now, if you have a piece like this, I'm gonna just sacrifice these little berries at the bottom. It's not really doing anything for me. I'm gonna cut it to about here so we have at least an inch that we can insert into the wreath, because this is a little bit top heavy, so we wanna make sure we have lots of points of contact with our glue to keep it from falling out. So make sure you're covering the whole stick at the bottom with the glue, just as we did with the cedar, and just tuck it in. So you'll have these really cute little pops of berries and greens coming out of your wreath. Now, if you ordered one of the other styles, you either got the thistle, which is great too because it kind of dries in place on your wreath. And you're gonna do the same thing with that. You're going to break these pieces off from the main piece. So on a piece like this, for instance, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that we're then going to glue in individually. And then if you have the seeded or this gold eucalyptus, you're going to cut it into a couple of pieces. So look for a place where the leaves that come off of the stem are close to one another and cut it there. Then you'll sacrifice these 2 leaves to have a stick to put this on. You'll get 2 placements out of it. Or if you just want to use them in tighter, you could trim it here and here and here so that each little stick just has 2 leaves on it, and then tuck them in the same way and work all the way around the wreath. If you want to use it a little bit longer and use the shape of the stem, then yeah, try to find a place where you're willing to sacrifice a couple of leaves and trim it there so you have 2 placements. You finish putting the holly in. Before I add my sticks, let me just backtrack really quick and go over that eucalyptus one more time. I'll actually cut it so you can see it. So as I was saying, if you have a stem like this, you're gonna cut it in a place where you can have one piece like this, and you can take these 2 off and have another piece like this. Now, these longer pieces are what's gonna work best, again, if you're doing that swag style. Because then you can put this in and have them be a little bit longer and hang out from the wreath a bit more. But if you're doing it in this more traditional style, which you can do with the metallic kit as well, you can trim them every 2. So you'll have a bunch of them looking like this. Or even every one, honestly. But then you kind of have to do a little bit of layering yourself. And then what you're gonna do is just put the glue on this bottom part of the stick and put them in that way. And that'll just like bring the gold around the entire wreath. So that's what you're gonna do with that. And if you have any weird pieces like this one, for instance, I'm like, this guy's going this way, this guy's going this way, maybe I just use it as a single. Put the glue on the whole thing and put it right on in there. You can still use this guy too. You can really even use them on just the stem like this. Make sure you cover the whole stem with glue and up onto the base of that leaf a little bit, and then just press it in underneath of something. So if you have a piece of cedar in your wreath already, and you just kind of come in underneath of it, like making a cedar sandwich, like this is what's happening in the wreath, you know? And then you see that little bit of gold peeking out in between the layers of the wintergreens. So just push it down in there and make sure it sticks in a couple of places to the different layers of greens, and you should be good. Now, we're gonna do sticks. The sticks work really great long, again, if you're doing the more swag style, because that's going to like really reinforce that shape. However, if you're just doing it all the way around, then you want to break these up into much smaller pieces. So you're really just going to use the birch as these little sticks, and we're going to put them into the wreath in the direction that we're going. And I like to do a couple of them grouped together, so it's not just like one stick sticking out. And you just work your way around. So again, you want to get in there with like about 1 inch of glue on the bottom. Try to keep it so it's following that wreath and just sticking out a little bit. You don't have to like come way out one way, you know, and then it's making the wreath like way wider than it needs to be. But at the same time, you don't have to make them perfect way around either. As you group them, they can kind of fan. Think about what would look like if you were making a wreath from scratch and you were holding the clusters of greens and branch together as you were making it. Some would be going this way, some would be going this way, and that's good. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I like it to be a little bit wild. You can have it coming up. If you don't have a screen door on top of your door, you can get lots of relief out of your wreath and make the stuff really come up off of it, and that's going to give a lot of texture when people see it like on your door. If you have a screen door that goes over to storm door that goes over, then you are going to keep it a little bit flatter so that you can close that door. You don't smash your wreath. A nice full wreath with lots of sticks and things going all the way around it. To be hung. Now we're going to come back in with our toppings. For this one, we have some pretty natural pine cones and some balls. I like to put the balls on last because they're the most delicate, and I don't like to, also if you get glue on the balls, it like pulls the finish off of them. So let's do our pine cones first. And I'm going to evenly space them out and do one more at the top and one on either side with 3 of them. Again, if you're doing the more swag style, you might group, 2 of them together on one side of your bow and like 1 on the other side, or maybe do all 3 of them in a cluster near your bow. That would look pretty also. And I'm going to cut these to about 2 inches because the goal is to get this down like deep into the base so that they don't pull out. So maybe I'll leave it a little bit longer. Yeah, so maybe 2.5 inches. I'm going to coat the entire stick with the glue. Especially if you got some of the metallic cones, if you did the metallic package, they're much bigger. So for those, you definitely make sure that you have the entire stem coated with the glue when you put it in, because they are a little bit top heavy and they might want to pull out. Side, and then one more at the top, and the other side. And then the balls, you should have 2 different sizes of balls in each of your packets. The larger ones and the smaller ones. Now the larger ones I was just going to use as individuals, or you could do them in 2 groups of 3. So they can pack like that. And these smaller ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so these we're going to do in groups of 3. So getting them out of their little twisted wire bottoms is kind of tough sometimes. You're going to try to find that one that's on the outside and take it off first. Now for these, you can use them with the glue gun, but what you want to do is bend this wire back up a little bit so you have like a double length of wire, which just makes it a little bit sturdier and give it a little twist. And then you're going to want to put the hot glue both on this little paper wrapper part at the bottom of your ball and on that entire piece of wire. just insert it right in there to the wreath. Kind of like jog it in there gently because the wire still is not very strong. It's just a double length of it. And then you'll work it through like that. The other option is you can just take the wire as it is and sort of get both your hands in there and feel around for a bough, like a nice thick part of the branch, and you can just wrap this around the bough. That works too. If you got your glue gun out, I just say glue everything. Once you have your balls separated, you can put them on your wreath first and see how you want them to look. You know, maybe I want one here, maybe I don't end up using them all. Just to kind of have a plan. And you can put your balls all out at the same time if you want to do the gold and the red to see how you want to have them spaced. That works. Twist these off like so. And just get an idea. Nothing is more frustrating than starting to hot glue things into a wreath and realizing you either don't have enough to do what you wanted or it's not going to get you all the way around the wreath. So it's good to sort of plan out a little bit first. And then working in one direction, take them each out one at a time and glue them. I want to go over here. And then again, for these, be super careful. Sometimes they clack against each other and they break. They are thin glass. So, and you know, if you live somewhere where, you know, lots of wind, or you know, you're worried about these falling off and breaking, maybe you want to omit these and use them someplace else in your decoration. I use these on my door. I've never had a problem with it. But if you were concerned with the breakage, maybe use them someplace where they're going to be a little bit safer. Okay. Now, once you have them all separated out, you just keep them in threes like so, and you're going to pull them together in your hands and then just twist. You'll have this. And then we do the same thing. We take our wires down at the ends, fold them back up over themselves like this, make a little hick almost. And then when you glue, again, you want to make very certain that you're putting lots of glue around this connection point here and onto the paper. That way they won't untwist. Push them down into your wreath. Okay, so let me put them out where I'd like them to go. Our finished product. Ready to be hung. Thanks for watching. For more inspiration and availability, visit flowersandfancies.com or call 410-653-0600 and follow along with us on Instagram and Facebook.